All right, so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be graphing quadratics. So quadratics are equations that have an x squared term as its highest power. So something that looks similar to this. So before we graph, we're going to need to figure out 4 things about this before I can graph it. So also before I start graphing, I need to label my quadratic equation, okay? So all quadratic equations are of the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. A is the number in front of x squared, b is the number in front of just x, and c is the number by itself. So I want to label these for this equation, and a, b, and c are always going to be just the numbers. I don't want to see any x squared. I don't want to see any x's with this. So a is the number in front of x squared. Well, there's no number here. But if there's no number, what number is always the number if there's no number? That would be a 1. The b in this case would be -4, and the c would be a 5, okay? So before I graph these, I'm going to need to figure out 4 things. The first one is whether it opens up or down. So this would be an example of a parabola that opens upward. This would be one that opens downward, right? Makes sense. So to figure out opens up or down, we're always going to look at our a value. Is a positive or negative? Well, in our case, this one's positive. So this is going to open up, okay? The y-intercept is always going to be our c value. It's always going to be 0, comma, and then whatever our c value is. Well, in this case, it's 0, comma, 5. Okay? Axis of symmetry. Okay, so axis of symmetry is the first bit where we're going to have to do a little bit of math. So the equation for the axis of symmetry is x equals -b over 2a. And again, b and a are just my numbers from over here. So all I'm going to do is plug this into this equation. So it's going to be x equals negative, and then be careful. My b here is -4, so it's going to be -4 over 2 times 1. Well, negative gives me what kind of number? +4 over 2, and that just equals 2. So my axis of symmetry is x equals 2. Okay? The last thing we're going to need to know is the vertex. And the vertex is always either this bottom point or this top point, depending on whether you open up or down. Okay? And the way we're going to find this is we're actually going to use this piece of information we just found here, our axis of symmetry. We're going to take this x value, and again, if I have an x value, for a vertex it's x comma y. So if you know an x value, how do you always find a y value? You take your x value, you plug it back into my equation. So that's just what I'm going to do here. So the y value is equal to, I'm going to plug this in, so it's going to be 2 squared minus 4 times 2 plus 5. 2 squared, that means 2 times 2, that's going to give me 4, minus 4 times 2 gives me 8, plus 5, this is going to give me -4 plus 5, and this is going to give me a 1. Okay? So my vertex in this case, remember, a vertex is x comma y. It's going to be 2 for the x, 1 for the y. Okay? Now I'm going to take all this information I just found and I'm going to graph it. So the first thing I'm going to do is always graph my vertex. So remember, my vertex is 2, 1. So I'm going to go to my graph 2, 1 and draw my dot. Okay? Now, in order to graph this, I'm going to need 2 other dots. Well, if you remember, one of my other dots was my y-intercept, 0, 5. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw that point. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and draw my dot here. Okay. So the thing about quadratics is anything that happens to the left of the vertex happens to the right, and vice versa. If something happens on the right of the vertex, it happens on the left. So if I look here, I want to figure out how do I get from here to here. So I went 2 to the left and then 4 up. So I can do the complete opposite on this side. I can go 2 to the right, but I'm still going to go 4 up and draw that dot. It's always symmetrical down that middle. And all I'm going to do here is take that and I'm going to graph and I'm going to graph. Okay? So that's all we need to do in order to graph quadratics. You're going to need to label my A, B, and C, find me these pieces of information, and then go ahead and just graph my picture from there. And that's what we got for today. Let's go.